How's it going, guys? Julian Bradley here from themusicalear.com. Today I'm going to share with you my origin story. I'm going to share with you how I got to where I am now, because I was not a child prodigy. I was in no way gifted for music. I didn't come from a musical family. Really, I'm going to show you how I went from struggling in music to being where I am now with a master's degree in music composition, living a very fulfilled life with music. So in this video, I'm going to show you my journey. We're going to get straight in. So for the first 10 years of music lessons, I struggled in music, and I truly struggled. My parents were not musical, but they wanted me and my two brothers to have the opportunity to have music lessons. They started me on piano lessons at age 7 and trumpet lessons at age 9. So for the first 10 years, the word that would describe my progress would be behind. I was truly behind in every area of my music. I was behind my friends in the piano books that they were on. They were on book 3 when I was still on book 1. I was behind in my grades. I remember being on grade 3 when there was another girl in our class who was doing grade 7 already. Now, on one occasion, I had to audition for the local orchestra, and my trumpet teacher said, "You'll be fine, just prepare these 3 pieces and go to the audition." I went to the audition, I played the 3 pieces, it went perfectly, I thought. However, a week later when I saw my trumpet teacher, he was there to tell me how I did, and he'd spoken with the conductor, and he said, "Yeah, I spoke to the conductor, he said it wasn't good, but I assured him that you were ready for this orchestra, so they've let you in and you just have to make sure you do a good job." It was just so confusing to me because I thought I'd played every note correctly. And then for the 4 years I was in that orchestra, I felt like I was continually on trial. I felt that if I ever played a wrong note, it would just confirm that I was not fit for the orchestra. So this feeling of insecurity just followed me to every musical environment, whether it was orchestra practice, whether it was music class, whether it was music lessons. I always felt very shy in music class. So if my teacher was asking a question to the class, I would always pretend to be writing, and my worst nightmare was to be called up to write on the board or even sing in front of the class. And something that made this worse was I encountered lots of what I call music bullies. If you've ever watched Whiplash, the character Fletcher is a music bully, someone who basically takes out their stress and their anger on music students. I have many memories over the years of being put on the spot, being asked to sing in front of my class. Now, everything culminated for me at age 17. By this time, I'd been taking lessons for 10 years, and I had a music exam with my whole class, and I was the only student in the class to completely fail that exam. So this was really embarrassing for me. I had to try and keep this a secret from my classmates, try to keep it a secret from my piano teacher, my trumpet teacher, who were asking me how my exams were going. And I basically had to arrange to retake the exam a year later. But the worst thing was I didn't really know why I failed the exam. My parents were asking me what went wrong, and I honestly didn't have an answer for it. But basically, I just didn't get how music worked back then. I didn't understand music theory. It was like this invisible game that was going on, and I couldn't tell what made a good piece of music from a bad piece of music, or why someone's a good composer versus a bad composer. So music was just this confusing language that I didn't understand at all. And at 17, that was the end of my struggles. In fact, I nearly gave up when I failed that exam. It was basically just confirmation that I was not a natural musician. I was not born to do music, and in fact I should do the other subjects which I was doing much better at. Now, shortly after failing this music exam, everything changed for me, and it changed quickly. It was getting close to Christmas time, and I was playing trumpet to my dad. I was playing some Christmas songs. Came a point where he requested a song, "God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen," and the song was not in the book that I was playing from, so I just said, "I don't have the music for it." And I remember his words. He just said, "Well, just see if you can figure it out. Just have a go." Mind blown, like, well, I don't have the sheet music. Well, okay. I remember starting on a C, and then I tried out a few notes, got a few wrong notes, eventually found that the second note was a G. Da, 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 da. And then I continued to just fumble through wrong notes until I found each note in that melody. And about 5 minutes later, I had transcribed my first melody by ear. And it was truly an amazing feeling. I remember it to this day. It's the first song I'd ever figured out on my own without sheet music and without a teacher showing me or even playing the melody first. Now, it felt so good that I went on and transcribed a second melody, which was the first Noel, and a third melody, Good King Wenceslas. And by the end of the evening, I'd transcribed about 5 songs by ear. Now, the next day, my world changed. I became addicted to transcribing songs by ear, and this went for all types of music. So any type of music I heard on the radio, if I was watching television, my favourite TV theme songs, which were Roswell and Smallville. And then if I was watching a film, I'd be transcribing the soundtrack. Things like the Matrix soundtrack was one of the more advanced ones that I transcribed. And one of my other favourites was The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. You know how they had those interludes with the sort of R&B style piano chords? So most of the time when you hear music played, you don't have your instrument on you, so you're just coming up with a theory in your head of what the notes are and what the chords are. So every evening when I got home from school, I would just power walk straight to the piano, and I'd start playing these covers of these songs or these riffs that I'd been listening to during the day, and I wouldn't even be able to sit down or take my bag off in time. I just had to hear if I was correct with my answer. And then a few months later, and I didn't even feel the need to test my answer because I got to the point where I was just 100% certain that that's the same melodic shape that I'm hearing, or those are the same chords that I'm hearing. And as my ear improved, I noticed other things were improving as well. So my understanding of music theory was shooting up through the roof. And music theory was something that I used to really struggle with. And I was actually enjoying the music theory now, and I was sort of seeing how it applied to the songs that I was transcribing by ear. Then there was my technique and my performance, which was improving as well, because I was suddenly playing piano in all these different styles. I was doing some classical, some soundtracks, some jazz, some R&B, some pop music. I was basically learning to play in all these different styles, which I was listening to by ear. Then there was my compositions. My compositions were finally starting to sound the way that I was hearing them in my head, whereas before I could never get them to sound the way that I could hear in my imagination. And most of all, my confidence increased. So I went from being probably the most shy student in my music class to being one of the most confident students in my music class within a matter of about 4 months. And I started gravitating towards the music room, whereas before I was trying to stay away from any musical environment. But now I was turning up to class early, I was jamming with my musician friends, I was forming bands with all these different musicians. Anytime I played the piano, I started to notice people just gravitating around me. There'd always be this group of 4 people, and I was just playing for myself or trying to figure out something by ear. And in a short period of time, I became one of the most confident students in the class. In fact, I wanted to be asked a question or asked up front to try and figure something out. And it was just a complete transformation. I went from extreme struggle, fear, shyness to extreme confidence and loving music on a much deeper level. So finally, a year later from my failed exam, I then retook the exam, I aced it, I enjoyed it, and I did the new exam for the new year, and I aced it, and I was one of the highest marks in our class. And then from then on, I've gone to study music undergrad level and a master's in composition. If I'd stuck with that failed music grade, I would never have been able to continue studying. So honestly, if I hadn't learnt to play music by ear, I would have probably given up at age 17. Maybe I'd have failed the exam a second time. And I'd have ended up as one of these people who just say, oh, I used to play music when I was in high school. And that could have so nearly been me. That was seriously close to that being my life, my story. Thank God I did learn to play music by ear, and that's what unlocked all these other areas of learning. So ever since learning to play music by ear, I've had a lot of success in music. Success which has just come naturally to me. It hasn't particularly been my goal. But I went on to study music at undergrad level. I got a first-class music degree, I think the highest in my class. I did study abroad to UC Santa Cruz. So we had ear training labs. There was a student in our class who had perfect pitch, and I'd always try to beat her on the ear training scores. And then a year later, I did my master's in composition for film. And then music exams became something that I looked forward to, this opportunity to sort of test myself and prove to, myself or whoever that I could ace this test or get 100%. Just since then, music has been an environment that I've gravitated towards rather than away from. So that's why I believe that ear training is the key to every musician's success. My whole message is that you have to learn to play music by ear to become a great musician, and you can't do it after you become a great musician. You can't become a great musician and then train your ear later. You have to train your ear at the beginning, and then that's what allows you to become a great musician. In fact, you can't stop yourself from becoming a great musician once you learn to play music by ear. So thank you for hearing me out on my story. I hope this gives you some encouragement. Again, I'll say that I was not a child prodigy. I was one of the sort of lowest in my music class for the first 10 years of lessons. So that's it for this video. Thank you very much for hearing me out. It's been my pleasure to share with you my music journey and getting to relive some of these negative and positive experiences. So I hope this inspires you, and I look forward to seeing you in a new video soon. And if you'd like more information on ear training, you can go to themusicalear.com. It's my website. There's a ton of free information. You can go through my free video series on ear training, which shows you how to practice ear training the right way and how not to practice ear training. You can also sign up for ear training email tips from me. These will be weekly emails which challenge you to transcribe songs by ear. And of course, if you'd like to take my complete flagship course in ear training, which is the Musical Ear course, you can sign up for the waitlist and I'll notify you by email when I next open enrollment. So that's it from me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next session of Everyday Ear Training.